everyone, this is Des from According to Des. Welcome to my podcast where I interview people with passions, hobbies, or side hustles trying to live their best lives by following their dreams and pursuing their goals. So get ready to be inspired. On today's episode, I am so excited to have Brittany Cartie. I'm really excited to talk to her because she's been vegan for years, living that lifestyle, not only with food, but also with the products she buys, clothing, shower products, etc. Very excited to hear about that because I am vegetarian. I am not fully vegan, but I do substitute a lot of dairy products for non-dairy products. So I am kind of inching my way into that lifestyle. So I am very interested to talk to her about that topic. But besides being vegan, Brittany is also an artist, and she's an amazing artist. I love that she combines her passions for veganism and animal rights and her art together. It's really, really cool to see her art promoting animal rights. Brittany and I met years ago when she posted on Facebook that she had a mama cat and a litter of kittens living outside, but the mom was very feral, so she couldn't get her. So she posted on Facebook looking for help. So my boss's wife, Diane, knowing that I run a cat rescue on the side, reached out to me asking if I could help Brittany. So Brittany and I worked together to trap this mama cat and her baby kittens. They were all like super, super feral, but we worked together to do that and get them into shelters, adopted, all spayed and neutered, etc. So Brittany and I kind of met in our mutual passion of animal rights and spaying and neutering cats. So that's really, really cool. I'm really excited to talk to her today. So here we go. Let's talk to Brittany about her vegan lifestyle and her art. Hi, Brittany. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Hi, nice to be here, or well, virtually.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk to you because I find the things you do very interesting. So for one, you've been vegan for a long time and you promote the vegan lifestyle. And two, you're an artist. And I love that you intertwine your passion for art and your passion for veganism. So I wanted to talk to you about that.
I love it. My two favorite topics. So
Yes. Let's start with how long have you been fully vegan?
yeah, so I say we, I'm probably going to say that a lot. My partner, Tyler, and I guess he's my fiance. I have a hard time with that word.
Yes, congratulations, by the way. I
Thank
saw
you.
that. That's amazing.
Yes, thank you. It's super weird. We've been together, it's going on 9 years. So it's like just happened, but we've been vegan. We decided to do it together 4 years ago. It was March 4 years ago. There was like a small transition period where we were vegetarian kind of for like maybe a month. And then we were like, no, we got to just go for it. And we did. Honestly, a pretty quick transition for us. It feels like it's been longer and shorter. I think a lot of people say that. Feels like we've been vegan our whole lives, but at the same time, it feels like it was just yesterday.
Wow, so you basically like cold turkey went into veganism.
Pretty much, yeah. The interesting thing about it is that I was always interested in it. Tyler, my partner, was very much like a meat and potatoes guy. I think that's just how his family, like, that's just how he was raised. Whereas I used to, like, at dinner was like, I don't want to eat this. I don't want to eat animals. My family would laugh at me and whatever. But it was always something on my heart. And then we started watching documentaries and these things were coming up and we were like, oh man, okay, yeah, we got to do this. This is going to be the right thing for us. And it has been. It's been amazing.
What was your motivation? Was it that guilt about eating animals? Is it animal rights? What was keeping it on your heart?
I think that growing up, I never cared for meat and I was a very picky eater. I wanted to eat literally the most bland food possible. I'm not like that anymore, but I was. I was just talking to Tyler about that the other night too, because we had a pasta with a vegan meat sauce, like with Beyond Meat. And I was like, oh my God, I used to hate this meal, but now I love it because it's different. It was a taste thing. And it was also that I loved animals and I just didn't understand like why. I think I was raised to think you had to eat them to be healthy. So I just kind of like bought into that and followed along with whatever my parents told me to do. But I think ultimately our motivation was environmental initially, which I think is interesting for us to look back on because it's such a huge thing for us. I think we've evolved to be a little bit more like ethically rooted. I would say it's pretty even. If I'm being upfront, health is like last place for us. Like we are not necessarily healthy vegans. I think there's so many different subsects of the movement and we kind of fall into junk food veganism, if I'm honest. We do our best. I would say we're still healthier than most American humans. We definitely indulge in vegan junk food and like comfort foods you grow up on and that kind of thing. Yeah, so health is last. I'd say ethical and environmental environmental were our biggest motivators for sure. Yeah.
And when you
Yeah.
were becoming vegan, where did you get your tips and education from and your vegan recipes?
I'm a huge advocate for documentaries, and that's kind of where we started. I don't even remember exactly how that came up that we decided to watch Cowspiracy. That's, I think, a lot of
Mm,
people's first one. We were like talking about potentially going vegetarian. I think we had come across a video just on Facebook or something that was just heart-wrenching to watch. I think it was the baby chicks. A lot of the times the males are ground up in the egg industry, and I think it
right.
was related to that, which was just horrible. And you don't know about those things because they don't want you to see it. So I think we saw that. We're like, okay, we're going to go vegetarian. Let's do this. And then it led us into doing our own research and finding some documentaries. So we watched Cowspiracy, which is mostly environmental for those that haven't seen it. And we were like, wow, there's so many reasons to do this. And then that led us into other documentaries at the time. That was 4 years ago. I think it was just like Forks Over Knives and What the Health, maybe. I'm not a huge fan of that one, to be honest, but it's something. As we started to try new recipes, try new things, I was using mostly Pinterest, and I still use Pinterest a lot
Oh,
for
me
finding
too.
recipes. Even if you don't follow it exactly, it's inspiring to look at
Hmm.
images of just beautiful food and, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then you just kind of go with it. So I use Pinterest a lot. I got a lot of vegan cookbooks as gifts, which was very motivating too, to try new things. I feel like it was a natural evolution. I think I was more invested in the research end of things than my partner was. So I was constantly just looking up things. If I had a question, I'm like, I'm going to research this. We're also very careful about making sure any source is super credible. And like I just mentioned with What the Health, it's a little bit exaggerated. It's a little bit like pulling at heartstrings instead of accurate information sometimes. We do make sure to be very careful about that. And I think that's really important with this movement because you want people to trust you and trust that this is a good thing. We try to be very careful with that too. But it just kind of evolved. I don't know. It's crazy to look back on.
Wow. Wow. And so you
Yeah.
said that you've gotten a lot of vegan recipe books as gifts.
Yeah.
How are your friends and family now? Do they support your veganism now as opposed to kind of making fun of you
Right.
before?
That was definitely a process. I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people. I think it's part of why a lot of people give up on it early on because they don't have that support system. And fortunately, my family, for the most part, was like, do your thing. At first, you always get the questions like, well, where are you going to get your protein and things like that?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we've all heard, but eventually they learned along with us. They've learned to respect it. And now my brother is vegan as well. So
Wow.
that's really cool to me. And it's not just my brother, my best friend, my other best friend just started it. That's how it spreads, I think, is leading by example in whatever community or family or friend group you're in. People kind of say, oh, like, look at how well they're doing in whatever respect that might be, whether it's health or whatever. It just kind of evolved. On the flip side, my dad's family, we kind of used to compare, this is horrible, but like compare our grandmas. The one was very conservative and strict, and the other was like, eat a whole can of Pringles. Yeah, like live your best life. My grandma on my dad's side was the more strict one, and she was very like 50s housewife. Every time we had dinner, we sat down, we made the table. You couldn't get up, you couldn't do this, whatever. No answering phone calls, things like that. And it was always a meat dish, pasta dish, or some kind of side dish, and then like Jello. And that was always the meal. To this day, she still, I don't think, fully understands it, but his family was a little bit less receptive to it, and they'll still occasionally like make little comments. Same thing with Tyler's family a little bit, but overall, over the years, I think they've learned that A, it's not something that's going away, both in our lives and worldwide. B, we're still alive. We're doing
Yeah.
great. In fact, we feel like we're thriving. We're not protein deficient, and and we're happy doing it. And it just takes time, but it is hard. It's hard when you don't have the support, and I'm just grateful that we did have it, at least from some of our family.
That's
Yeah.
great. And I think it is just a diet and a lifestyle that's getting more
Yeah.
popular because now everywhere vegan restaurants are popping
Oh
up, just
yeah.
strictly vegetarian or vegan restaurants. And now any restaurant you go into, it used to be such an issue because I'm
Yes.
vegetarian. I'm not fully
Yeah.
vegan, but I have supplemented a lot of, like, I don't use cow milk anymore and that,
Yeah.
butter, things like that. So I've
Yeah.
supplemented a lot of things, but it used to be
Awesome.
years ago so hard going into a restaurant. You're like, okay, well, I guess
Oh my
I'm
God.
getting
Yeah.
salad.
Yes, we talk about that all the time, just how different it is from 4 years ago. My mom is a travel agent. We traveled a lot growing up, and we travel a lot still, well, not right now, but,
Right.
you know, we try to get in one Disney trip every year. That was always our tradition growing up. 4 years ago, when we first started, my mom and I went to Paris as a graduation gift. It was like the most amazing thing. So she took me to Paris. We went to Disneyland Paris, and it was maybe like 6 months in being vegan. You know, I was still learning so much. There's also a language barrier, all these things. I also have a severe tree nut allergy, which is very present in vegan foods.
Oh,
And so I was mortified, like, how am I supposed to eat in this place that I've never been to? I don't speak the language. In Disneyland in particular, they were relatively accommodating, but it was like there was nothing on the menu. It was kind of, oh, go talk to the chef and they'll do this for you. And then we went to Disney World the following year in Orlando. Same thing. We'd have to park hop to get meals. Like, we'd have to go from Magic Kingdom to Epcot to like go get lunch,
oh.
which is like kind of a distance, you know?
Yeah,
Or like go downtown to eat. And it was kind of a nightmare. But now every single restaurant on site in Disney has a vegan option. And
that's
it's so
amazing.
crazy. It's just completely different. We haven't been since they did that, and I'm so excited. But it's just wild to see how much it's changed. And same thing with even local restaurants, you
Hmm.
know, in Binghamton and wherever. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. That is the hardest part, I think, because I travel a lot also. And I think that is the hardest part, especially when I went to China. Every single day
Oh yeah.
I ordered eggs and there was meat like chopped up tiny in the
Oh
eggs. And I was like,
no.
what? Like
Oh
anywhere,
no.
yeah, anywhere I travel. And then we recently just did over the summer a road trip in Nebraska because we're trying to see
Oh
like
awesome.
every state. I remember one little like it was one restaurant in the whole town. So we are like, okay, let's stop here. And every salad on the menu had chicken or bacon or
Oh
whatever. So
yeah.
I said, can I have a salad with no meat? And the guy looks at me and he goes, so what, just lettuce? And I was like, no. So so I guess some places it's still not
Yeah. Oh
and I
yeah, definitely.
some days in Nebraska I definitely only had french fries for lunch because there was no other options.
Yes.
But in
French fries
Omaha,
are always
yeah, they're always a safe bet. But
yeah.
Omaha, they had an actual just vegan restaurant, which was amazing. So I guess
Oh,
like the
that is
bigger city
awesome.
in Nebraska. Yeah.
Yes.
So it definitely is more, I guess, accepting and, normal
Yeah.
in bigger cities, but smaller, like little towns, I think it's still people don't understand, but it is just
Yeah.
becoming so much more widespread that it's not strange anymore. Like every
Right.
restaurant has the Impossible or the Beyond Burger.
Yes. Oh, I love it so much.
Hmm.
It's funny that you mentioned that because we always have like debates with people that have tried Impossible and Beyond, like which one is better and whatever. And I will just say it for the record, we're Beyond people.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yes. They're both amazing. But
Yeah.
oddly, my partner does not have this experience. But when I eat Impossible, I feel so sick after. And I've learned that it's because they have a plant-based heme iron in it that your body sometimes can't register is plant-based.
Oh.
It thinks I'm eating meat, which is so crazy. So I don't go into that world anyway, but that was like a fun fact I learned recently. I'm
Oh,
like, why?
that is very
Yeah.
interesting. Wow.
See, that's the thing that I made sure very early on that my family understood is we can't have things just snuck into our food. And it is a big deal when
Mm.
there's cheese on top of something because we can't eat those foods anymore or we will get sick. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
what your body does. It adapts, especially in terms of dairy. And I know you said you're vegetarian, which is totally fine. We obviously don't consume dairy. I think anyone that isn't consuming it regularly, you kind of start to lean into that lactose intolerant world. Technically, everybody is. It's just that you grow up with it, so your body's used to it. I think people underestimate how serious it can be when there is just a little bit of butter or, whatever it may
Mhm.
be. And we always know too. That happens with our Starbucks orders all the time. I'll
Oh,
take a sip
no.
and I'm like, uh-oh. It's just one of those tricky little things you have to navigate, but
Yeah, definitely. I'm not fully vegan, but I definitely notice
right.
because yeah, we have non-dairy milk, we have non-dairy
Yeah.
butter, we have non-dairy ice cream, and the
Yeah.
I don't eat cheese a lot, but I do still eat it sometimes. And when I eat it, I don't get sick, but I just feel like bleh. Like I just feel like
Right.
I feel
Yes.
very heavy.
Yes, I totally get that. Even like that transition period for us, we noticed that too. It's really interesting.
Wow. So do you have a favorite vegan recipe that you guys cook?
I think it's a tough question because we are always trying new recipes just constantly. I think that's the most fun part about this lifestyle is it's ever changing and ever developing. We're like in this phase where chefs and people that develop recipes are trying new things too. Obviously, you can always lean on making your comfort foods from growing up or whatever vegan, but then there's also completely new innovations taking place as well. So for us, I think that our go-to like favorite meal, because we're both very Italian, is pasta. Any
Oh
kind
yeah.
of like comforting, like heavy pasta dish. First thing that comes to mind is we make this homemade coconut milk blush sauce with sun-dried tomatoes. It's so good. And you don't even taste the coconut, because I used to be kind of sensitive about coconut. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I kind of love it now, but but you don't taste it at all. It's just the most savory, beautiful sauce. And that was what came to mind first. And you can do so much with it too. We put it on veggies or pasta or whatever, or both at the same time.
Oh, yum. Yeah, that
So
sounds great.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds really good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
as for your vegan lifestyle, are you also strict about the clothes that you buy and like the shoes that you buy, not buying leather and like your shampoos and things like that?
Yes. Yes, we are. I keep saying we because for Tyler and I, it's such like a team effort.
Yeah, that's great. It makes it easier, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, because when it comes to shoes and clothes, it can be tricky. I think a lot of people forget that. My friend that is transitioning right now, actually, she asks me questions all the time. She's like, is this vegan? Like, is it okay if I buy this? And that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, you have to make those decisions, first of all, yes or no, whether or not it's vegan. But we are conscious of that. I always tell people when it comes to lifestyle stuff versus food, or even with food, mistakes are going to happen. It just boils down to reducing harm as much as is realistically possible. But we are very conscious of it. And anytime I go, well, I'm not shopping right now, but anytime I do, let's say I want to buy a new pair of shoes or whatever it may be, we do our best to not only obviously make sure all the materials are animal free, animal product free, but also that they are environmentally friendly as well. That's something that we're really passionate about. So we try to buy from eco-conscious brands whenever possible. We try to avoid fast fashion and that kind of thing too. That's something I'm like really working on, because I was raised by a mother that like clearance rack is, woo, that's the best. And it is so invigorating to get like a good deal, but I'm trying to not do that anymore and buy things that are going to like hold up over time and whatever. Yes, I'm a label reader through and through, making
It's
sure that everything is safe.
it's so hard to tell because just
It is.
animal products are in everything. It's
It's
unreal.
sneaky. Yeah,
Yes.
it's sneaky. And they have weird names for things sometimes. I think so many people are misinformed about gelatin and what
Yes.
that actually is. And I grew up with my grandma telling me it was horse hooves. I think so many people think that. And it's not, it's literally bones and like bleh, just
Yeah.
intestines and disgusting things. I think because it's in a pretty package, we don't think about the fact that it comes from an animal's body part, you know, a
Mhm.
gummy or a marshmallow or jello or whatever. My grandma's very guilty of that because she's always like, but jello is like colorful and it's jiggly and it's fun. And I'm like, yeah, but gelatin isn't vegan. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
tricky. It really is.
It's hard for people because
It is.
you just don't know. You have no idea that,
No,
oh, you're eating this gummy bear. You don't know there's an animal product in it. It's
exactly.
very hard. Yeah.
And it extends for us too, as you had asked, into shampoos and things like that as well. I am a big makeup lover, so I'm very conscious about that. And that's a tricky area too, because a lot of makeup has carmine in it, which is ground beetles, and like beeswax, which is not vegan either. So many weird little things. And we're also conscious of supporting cruelty-free brands. And that's a big thing, especially as people that have many fur babies, some of which are rabbits, which are often tested on. And it's just like a huge
Mhm.
thing we're passionate about. It extends into every aspect of our lives that we can control. There's obviously some things that you just can't. Hopefully it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any brands that you could recommend to people either for shampoo or
Oh
makeup
yeah.
or
Yes, definitely. Oh my gosh, one of my other favorite topics. um when it comes to body care and shower supplies, we tend to buy primarily from Lush, which I think is just the most beautiful, amazing store to walk into anyway.
Lush
Obviously
is
you can order
great.
online. Yeah, it's
Lush
just
is
it
great.
you walk in and you're just like, I'm in a whole different world. Like it's amazing. We've tried to transition wherever possible. Again, sometimes it's just not, but wherever possible, we're trying to evolve into package free and leaning more toward zero waste as much as we can. It's a little trickier right now, obviously. Traditionally with our shower gels or shower creams, we're now using like the naked body products from Lush. It looks like soap almost, but it performs like a body wash would. We use shampoo bars, conditioner bars, facial soap bars, things like that. Big fan of Lush. If that's not like a priority in terms of like package free and that sort of thing, I feel like we're moving into a world where most brands either are or are going to have to be cruelty free. I don't know if you are aware of California's thing that they're bringing into law, but California is doing this where they're requiring things to be cruelty free. The rest of the nation should evolve because California is huge. You know what I mean?
They'll follow.
They'll have to. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a big thing. And a lot of brands are changing. That market is also tricky because there's people that support cruelty free brands, whether or not their parent company tests on animals. And then there's people that support cruelty free brands that sell in China. And in China, they do require animal testing. It can be really dicey. It just kind of depends on what you are okay with. And for us, we're even still trying to figure that out. You know what I mean? It's just kind of something you take a step at a time. As far as other brands for makeup, I am personally not someone that worries so much about the parent company testing on animals. So for example, Urban Decay is owned by L'Oreal. And L'Oreal tests on animals, but Urban Decay does not. So it's like, yes, you know, they're owned by them and money is going to L'Oreal. I look at it from the lens of I'm voting for a subsect of their company that is cruelty free, and I'm letting them know that that's what I support and that's what I'm for. So
Gotcha.
I'm a big fan of Urban Decay and Tarte. God, what else? Hourglass is amazing. It's super expensive, but it's amazing. They're all vegan. Milk makeup, ironically, is all vegan and cruelty free. That's a big one that Tyler does not wear makeup that I enjoy. I mean, maybe it'll get a little wild. You never know during a pandemic.
You never know.
So there's so many, and I guess to just generalize it, there's lots of resources online if people were interested in just looking into what is and isn't, because it can be surprising what brands do test on animals consistently and whatever. I always refer back to Cruelty Free Kitty, which is a blog, or Logical Harmony, which is also a blog. They have Instagrams, and you can just Google them, and they have big long lists. All the brands that are cruelty free, all the ones that aren't, which ones have parent companies, all that stuff. So you can kind of look through and decide where you stand.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So something I love is that you intertwine your passion for art and veganism together. So you've been posting and making these adorable like cards with like bunnies on them and everything. So first of all, when did you know that you wanted to be an artist?
So I have just known my whole life. And I think
Wow.
that's kind of like an interesting thing. Some people say that and you're like, what? Really though? And then some people, it's just more of a hobby or whatever that they had in childhood and carried over into adulthood. For me, it was not simply like, oh, I like to draw as a kid. It was like, no, this is going to be my life. Like, I'm going to do this as a career. My parents were super supportive of it, which was obviously such a huge deal because some parents are not as supportive of creative fields and fields that aren't going to like bring in the money or whatever, traditionally anyway. They, from like day one, were super supportive. They noticed at a very early age that it wasn't just that I liked to draw and I was okay at it. They were like, oh, there's something different here. And if it's something she wants to do, we should really help and encourage her to do that. And my 5th grade graduation self-portrait of what I wanted to be in the future was of me as an artist. It's just like so weird to look back on. Yeah. And I think that even when I was younger, I was like, this is my dream. I don't think I fully believed in myself and believed it was attainable until I got to high school. And in high school, the Goldens,
Yes.
They're amazing. I mean, I always want to call her Mrs. Golden still because it feels weird. Like, I know we're all adults. I could say her first name, but Diane like completely changed my life. And she knows it, and it like makes me emotional because even after high school, like she's just always been so supportive. I was fortunate in high school to receive 2 National Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. I don't know if I'm sure I'm not sure. I don't know for a fact if that ever occurred in our school system prior, but it was a big deal. And to receive 2 of them, it was 2 separate years, was a big deal. And that alone, I was like, oh, I could make something of this. Not only do my family, my community, all these people believe in me, nationally, I believed in it on some level or whatever. And like these mysterious people that judge your art, they believe in me. And it was just like a very validating thing. And it was a really cool experience too. Like you travel into the city and they do this whole ceremony at Carnegie Hall. And
My
we had
gosh.
yeah, it was wild. We had our artwork on display for months at the World Financial Center. It was just one of those things that like I never imagined could have happened. And then it did. And I was like, okay, all right, let's do this.
That's amazing.
And then I pursued it. Yeah. It was
Wow.
really cool.
So what happened after high school? What did it look like you pursuing your art?
In high school, I went through the stages of, various classes to kind of figure out like where I fit into the art world. Because as a kid, I was drawn to more of like a cartoonist sort of realm. My dream was to work for Disney. I think probably because I just loved Disney so much. But I always said I was going to be like an animator or cartoonist of some sort for Disney.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny to me now because that is so different from what I work with now and whatever. So it evolved from that into when I got to high school, kind of figuring out where my place was. I took drawing classes, painting classes, jewelry making, ceramics, all these different genres of art, and eventually figured out that I fit mostly into the world of 2D art and traditional materials like graphite and charcoal and watercolor and things like that. And so that kind of propelled me into figuring out because I knew I wanted to go to college and I knew I wanted to go for art, and I also knew I wanted it to be an art centric school. So I had like things in mind, but I didn't necessarily know what program would be fitting for my goals and what I was interested in. And ultimately, I decided that my dream school was the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is in Baltimore, Maryland. I was accepted. I got their highest scholarships, all these beautiful, wonderful things. I went for a year, and unfortunately, I couldn't fund the rest of my time there because it is a private school. It was super expensive. But I will say that even just going for that 1 year, especially that year right out of high school, that, everyone thinks about their first year of college and like moving away and living on your own for the first time. That was such a vital part of, I think, who I am now. It helped me to figure out who I am and like what was important. And it was really hard too, because obviously first of all, I'd never lived away from home. Baltimore is so different from Binghamton.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely different. I was on my own, didn't have a car, I didn't have trying to figure out how I'm gonna eat and pay for my art supplies and all these. It was so hard, but it was so good. And the schooling aspect of it was really challenging too. I went from being the artist in my high school and everyone knowing that that was my thing and everyone kind of looking at you as like someone who stood out, as a talented person or whatever, to being one of hundreds. And
wow.
Everyone's kind of fighting for the same thing, and you're no longer unique, really. I mean, you have to make yourself unique and you have to kind of evolve and develop that. So it was very shocking to the system, but it was very good for me. And I am grateful that I got that first year. And then eventually I came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be able to return because of finances. My parents were in the middle of a divorce. It was very messy and very financially draining. So it just unfortunately didn't work out. And I'm kind of glad it didn't in a way, because now I look at it and I'm like, wow, I would owe so much money.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I don't think I'd be okay. But and who knows, like maybe my life would be different. Maybe I would have sold a painting for millions or something. But yeah, it's just shocking. I transferred to our local state university, Binghamton University, which was, I think, really hard initially for me to come to terms with, because they're not known as an art school. They're primarily known for their research and science-based programs and things like that, which is ironically, that's my brother's world. And my brother went to Binghamton too. He is complete opposite of me. It is so funny how like siblings are so different, but I was very resistant to it and very jaded about that process initially, and it ended up being a really good thing in the end. I transferred there when they were going through a transition phase in terms of who was leading the department and that kind of thing. So the art program was kind of a mess when I entered, and that just kind of made me feel like, oh, like what am I doing? Like, is this the wrong choice or whatever? They kind of got their stuff together. I got myself together. Everything worked out. I gained a lot from that too. And I think the biggest aspect of that being a positive experience was that I was able to live at home, which was a good thing at the time anyway. I was able to drive myself to school and whatever, and that was great. And then I was also able to secure a job in art locally at a paint and sip studio. And I've been there for 6 years. And so I got to do that while I was in college, which was great. And then after college, continue with that a little bit as well. I mean, who knows what other opportunities I would have had, but I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And I think that was a big part of my growth as well. So it's interesting how things work out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Do you have a defining moment of when you became a professional artist?
It's a little bit weird because, as I was mentioning before, I don't think I ever looked at art as a hobby. It was always an end goal. It was always I'm working towards something, even as a kid. But I would say, like, in terms of labeling myself professionally as an artist, I still have a hard time with it.
Do you?
To say, like, I'm an artist, I'm a working artist or whatever. I think while I was in college, I was able to lean on, oh, I'm a student artist. Like, I'm still in that learning phase. And you're always in that learning phase. And that's the thing that I think I struggle with, is I'm always going to be learning and evolving in art. It's a weird thing. And I think that one aspect of it, especially in what I call my day job, although it is technically my night job, at Encore, the people that come in there, a lot of the times, they're not very familiar with art and the art world. So I'll get a lot over the last 6 years. I've had this question so many times. This is what you're doing right now, but what's your real job? And I hear that so much. Yes. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have asked me that. And I'm like, well, first of all, what I'm doing right now is my real job. It is a job. And then I am also an artist. And I think because I've had so many discussions with people like that in the studio at Encore, it's kind of left me feeling insecure about just openly saying, like, hey, I'm an artist. This is what I do. Because I think when people hear that, they're thinking, oh, you're an artist. Okay. Like, they're thinking of, like, the things that you'll see on Facebook that pop up about artists or whatever it might be. People just have misconceptions about it, I think, sometimes. I always want to, like, defend myself, and it's so silly. Like, even before I answer the question, I feel like I'm defending my career path, and I'm trying to get away from that. And I think that I have over the years a lot. I used to be very insecure about it. It's a weird thing. So I would say that I have a hard time labeling myself as a professional artist because of those things. But I think that I accepted the fact that I am a professional artist and that this is my path. Actually, 2 summers ago, when I was commissioned by an Emmy-winning actress for
I saw that.
piece.
That's amazing. I saw that you posted that. That's incredible.
Yes. It felt like that breakthrough moment that everyone talks about in their careers. And I was like, okay, here it is. This is it. Let's do it.
Wow.
It was really crazy. And I think just like the national awards were validating, that was also validating. I have sold work since high school, and I've done commissions for people since high school, and that picked up a lot while I was in college as well. But I think that that specific instance, obviously it was somebody with notoriety or whatever. And that is, unfortunately, in a way, is a big part of making it in art, is getting recognized by the right people and having relationships with the right people and connecting and whatever. I think because it was not only a big sale and it was a big name and whatever, it was also because it was my own art that I was selling. And it wasn't somebody, I mean, she did commission me to make a similar piece to something I had done for 205 Dry, which is a local bar connected to Encore. So she wanted a similar piece, but ultimately she's like, I want you to just put yourself into it. I want this to be your thing. I trust your vision for it, whatever. And she gave me kind of full reign, which is a huge deal for artists. I think people don't always realize that, because the other commissions that I'm used to doing are replications of a photo, pet portrait or a family portrait, and things like that. And it becomes this monotonous, I'm a printer kind of thing. It's a weird thing. I get why people want that kind of stuff. I totally understand it, because I've done portraits of my own pets and things like that. It's just a nice, intimate portrayal of someone or something you care about. I think that people don't realize that that's not often, sometimes for some artists it is, that's not often what drives us in art. I want to create work that resonates with me and makes connections for people, and like the vegan series, and that's making a difference in some way, things like that. So that was like the breakthrough thing. It made me a little more comfortable with saying that I'm an artist.
That's great. That's really amazing. That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
That's a really
It
good
is.
feeling.
Yeah.
So you make all sorts of different things. Like you said, you make your commissions and then your free flowing art for yourself. How long does it take you to make one piece on average?
Yeah, so this is also a really tricky question because it's kind of twofold. This is another thing I'm trying to be more like accepting of and open with myself about, but I live with very severe anxiety and ADHD, which makes art making sometimes just horrible, like
Oh,
torturous. And I
wow.
think that people don't understand that. They're like, well, it's what you love, it's what you're passionate about. Like, how could it be miserable sometimes or whatever? It really depends. Like, some art is not. And when you get into that state of flow, it's great and it feels amazing and you feel fulfilled doing it. And then other times it's work and it feels like work. And I really struggle with being a little bit too hard on myself and a little bit too much of a perfectionist. I'm very detail oriented. A lot of that comes from the anxiety, but even from the ADHD, that's a thing that a lot of people suffer with is, yes, you can lack focus, but you can also become too focused and hyper focused. On a side note, I did a 24-hour drawing marathon a few years ago, which was really cool. We just drew one figure, one model for 24 hours straight with no
Wow.
breaks. Well, we would have breaks to like eat occasionally, but so it was
Wow.
24 hours straight. And I knew that that was going to be one of the most challenging things I had ever done. And some people maybe felt differently about it, whatever. I knew it was going to be difficult for me because that meant 24 hours of focusing. And that's very challenging for me. It was really interesting because what ended up happening, I learned a lot about myself in that I drew the base figure, whatever. I started rendering. I was the only person of the entire, I think there was 10 of us, 12 of us. I was the only person that didn't finish, first of all.
Oh, really?
Yes, I realized it's because I tend to hyper focus on sections that maybe like I should just move on from. And I just have a hard time with that. Like, it has to be perfect kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
I ended up hyper focusing on this one section the whole time. And then in the last 5 minutes, I tried to whip out a few areas. And those areas that I tried to whip out in the last 5 minutes were, in my opinion, the most successful, which is
Really?
really weird. Yeah, I just almost don't trust myself sometimes. It's all just a mental game. It's almost like exercise and running and things like that. Like, you have to lie to yourself and like work yourself up to get where you need to go or whatever. It can take me sometimes, I don't even know that I would say a few hours, but a night. I'll spend a night on a piece and it'll be done. And then sometimes it will take me months and months. And a lot of that is not necessarily that I'm working on that piece for months straight. It's that I'm avoiding the piece for this duration of time because I'm so stressed out by the way it's going or whatever it might be. I am also notoriously, I think, as a result of all those things, a big procrastinator.
Right.
And so when I was in college, oh God, I never ever want to feel the way I did when I was in college. I would put things off so long because I was just too scared to fail. That's what it boiled down to. I think it was another issue of perfectionism and that kind of thing. So I'd put it off, put it off, put it off. And then, okay, I have 24 hours, 72 hours, whatever it might have been to finish this entire super ambitious piece. And I would always pull it off and make it work, but it was horrible. Like, it was the worst I would ever feel because obviously that anxiety builds when you're doing something like that, but I'm also not sleeping. I'm not really taking care of myself in whatever ways. Ironically, though, sometimes I feel like that is my most successful work is when I
Oh,
am
interesting.
like slowly dying. It's it's horrible. I think that's the case for a lot of creatives though. Is like that rush period sometimes is when you produce your best stuff and it sucks, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
So
Well, it sounds like
yeah,
you
it's
put your whole heart and soul into it.
I do. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's
Oh,
really comforting for people to hear looking at your
yeah.
amazing, gorgeous work and just
Oh,
knowing you have this imposter syndrome and this anxiety and you
yes. Oh my
procrastinate.
gosh.
I think it gives everybody else some hope for themselves.
Yes, definitely. I wish more people were open about that stuff because I feel like it took me a long time to realize that that's normal. And
Mhm.
most people in creative fields or even in any field feel that way. My partner is a computer science person. He's a software engineer and he feels that way all the time. And it's like, okay, that should be something that's a little bit more like linear and straightforward or whatever. But he's constantly beating himself up over his stuff too. And it's just like everybody feels that way, but nobody seems to talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you have any like tips for people or things you do for yourself that help you to overcome that procrastination, that anxiety,
Yeah.
that self-doubt?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a process. process, and I'm definitely still very much in like the thick of it when it comes to that stuff. But I have found that first and foremost, especially in creative fields, when you're making work that whatever that may be, whether it's music or art or so on and so forth, if you're making work that matters to you and is important to you, I think you're so much more driven to do it. When I'm doing work for people, commissions, things like that, I think when you know that there's someone on the other end of it that is going to be judging it in some way, whether negative or positive or whatever it may be, that makes it a lot harder. I think that was a big part of why college was challenging for me is, you go through these crazy like 6-hour critiques of your work and someone's breaking down something that you put your heart into, and it's really hard. It's important, but it's hard. So I think I've realized that like with the vegan series, obviously there are people on the other end of that are buying the prints or that are resonating with the work in some way and connecting with it. There is still someone on the other side, but I'm making that work because it's something that's sitting in my heart and it's my way of being active in that community and contributing to that community and to that whole message that I'm so passionate about. So I think that when you're making work that you're passionate about, it makes it a lot easier to get started and to get into that state of flow. I think getting started is always the hardest part. I have been trying to exercise. I read this article that was like, take these steps and whatever. And those don't usually work for me, but it was basically like, listen, there's nothing wrong with you. This is normal. It's okay. Here's like how you can make it easier when possible, because it's not always possible. So my partner too, if he knows that I'm having a hard time or I'm procrastinating, he'll be like, let's talk about what the very first step is. Even if it's literally like moving from your computer chair to your art stool, like what is that first step? Like, let's just do that together. I think it's really important to have a support around too. That's so helpful. He'll help me kind of move to that first step. It really is true that when you do make that small effort, you can usually kind of work yourself into it. And then when you are in it, you don't want to stop usually. Sometimes maybe. And if you're beating yourself up about how it's going, then that's a different story. People have recommended to me a lot over the years to work in segments to say, okay, I'm going to dedicate this hour to this thing. And I know that works for some people. It unfortunately doesn't work for me. I just can't rationalize that for whatever reason. Another thing that I tend to do is when I am in that state of flow and things are going pretty well, I will always have something else, some other stimulation, whether it's a podcast or Netflix or music or whatever, something else going on to kind of keep my mind active so that I'm not constantly belittling myself and like, oh, you're not good enough. And I think that really helps too. You almost have to distract yourself from your thoughts. You also have to be realist about them and acknowledge them, because I do think that's important. You can't just brush them off and like save them for another day. I do really enjoy having something else going on. Audiobooks are great too. So with art, that's possible. Obviously, some things, unfortunately, that wouldn't be possible. Like if you are a musician or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
when possible, that's really helpful.
Those are great tips. Those are really great tips.
Yeah.
And so do you have your own little, because I've read that this really helps having a designated space. Do you have like a place in your apartment where you only do art?
Yeah, I do. My partner and I live in a 3-bedroom. One room is our bedroom. One room is what we call our chinchilla room. Because we have chinchillas and we have a rabbit. And the rabbit is free roam, but she spends the night up in the chinchilla room. That's like her space. They have their own room. And then I was lucky enough to have the 3rd room as my studio space. Half of it is kind of dedicated to my art. And then half of it is kind of like what I would call my sanctuary, because it's where I get ready and like where I just kind of zen out and just like, I have my closet in here and stuff too. And that stuff I just find very cathartic to like put on makeup and whatever. It's kind of half and half. I would say like it's not the most ideal, especially because I do very large work sometimes. I have to literally kick all my animals out and do it, some of it you just have to make it work. But my goal eventually is to get a proper studio space. But for now, I think I have made the most of the space I do have. And I've spent a lot of time getting things that make it easier to maneuver this space. And it works for me for now. So,
Wow. Oh,
Yeah, but it
great.
is nice to retreat to a space. I think that is important, especially if you do want to take yourself seriously in a career like this. Having somewhere where you can go and work is definitely important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I know that you said you have your art hanging in 205 Dry. So you have your
Yeah.
art already hanging in a restaurant. I know you've had at least one or two art shows. So what is next
Yeah.
for you? What are your future goals? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah. That's definitely the hardest question.
Yeah.
Like of all of them. And I get that question all the time, especially on courts. People will follow up with what is your goal in art and that kind of thing. I'm constantly asking myself that too.
Mm,
And it's constantly changing. But I do have goals that have stuck with me even since childhood and that kind of thing. So I think where I'm at right now, I could break it down into a few different categories of like goals that I have, and I consider them connected but separate, if that makes sense. Right now, I've been with Uncorked Creations for 6 years. I'm currently the lead artist and the studio manager there. So I lead most of the classes. I train all the new employees. I make all the artwork. Well, not all of it. The other artists do too, but I make a lot of it. I've made over 400 paintings for
wow.
Uncorked. Yes.
400.
Yes. And I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
they're supposed to be like beginner friendly. It's not work that I would put in my portfolio by any means. It's a lot
Yeah.
of work for sure. So
Wow.
it's been amazing, but I'm at a point now where I am trying to move on from that. And my boss knows this, so she wouldn't be surprised if she
Okay.
listened. Um, but
That's good.
I think she's kind of known for a long time because there was a point where I was applying to graduate schools and stuff too. So she always knew it was coming. But I'm kind of at this point now where I'm turning 27, which is still young. Don't get me wrong. I think everybody does when they're super young. They imagine their life at this age to be this thing and whatever. And so I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, okay, I'm moving toward my 30s and I have so many goals. And I just, why not start now? Like, why would I prolong that? I am very fortunate to have a partner that has a stable career. When in doubt, if I'm a starving artist on the streets, he's got my back. But and I know not everybody has that privilege, but I guess I'm at the point where I'm like, I have to take advantage of that. So I'm kind of transitioning away from Uncorked. It's a very weird time because my plan, I think, is going to have to change as a result of this pandemic.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, I'll work a few more months, I'll save up, and then, whatever. But now I'm like, oh, now things are very different.
Yeah.
So who knows? I think my short-term goals are to continue with the vegan series and the vegan illustrations. I consider those very separate from my fine art
Okay.
because they're just completely different worlds. Illustration is a little bit kind of more in the commercial realm, more in that like graphic arts category, whereas fine arts are more like you think of the galleries and the shows and that whole life. So I look at
Right.
them separately. I also look at the vegan illustrations as activism more so than I do anything else. And my goal with that stuff is not necessarily to make a profit for myself. Right now, the money that's generated from it ends up just literally getting turned over back into production to buy supplies, to buy whatever, and to kind of advance what I'm able to do with that because I do sell prints and stickers and I have an Etsy shop and things like that too. So that ends up generating back into production. But my goal is to start generating more income through that to then give back to vegan nonprofits and sanctuaries and wherever I can. So that would be my goal there. And I really want to, I don't know if this is still going to be possible because I don't know what is going to get canceled and that kind of thing, but we love going to Veg Fests over the summer and the fall. And I really wanted to travel and to do booths at different Veg Fests and sell my prints and stickers and things like that. And just like talk with tons of people. I just think it would be so cool and so fulfilling. That was a short-term goal. We'll see like what happens now with all this craziness. That was a big plan of mine. And then as far as the fine art world, I think that's more where my heart is for sure in terms of what I've always dreamed of as a kid and so on and so forth. I dreamed of showing in galleries and getting my work out there. I think it's a really hard thing to break into because it can be a little stuffy. It can be a little bit of a game, a little political. It's tricky, but I am dedicated to doing that. And so my goals with that, I would say, are to start reaching out to galleries, sending work out, sending portfolios, whatever it may be. I've done a little bit of it locally, but not like in the bigger scale. And I think a lot of that just comes from being scared of it. And
Mm,
so I need to just do it. You know what I mean? I've been very fortunate to have so many opportunities come to me, but I haven't sought out opportunities myself as much. I
right.
think, again, out of fear.
It is very scary. It's very scary to put
Yeah.
yourself out there. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I have to just break through that and realize that, you're not going to get anywhere unless you take some risks and that sort of thing. So I'd like to reach out. I really want to do some artist residencies as well. They can vary in duration, but the ones I'm looking at can be like 2 weeks to a month. And you're basically just creating work in a rigorous environment for that amount of time. Those are great too, because I do a lot of 2D art that I can do at home, but I also, part of my degree was in printmaking, and I don't have the resources to do that. You need a $10,000 print press, you know what I mean? And you need like acid baths and all these things that like you can't just have in your home. So I would love to do a residency for printmaking eventually and be able to get some more work through that as well for my portfolio. And I've toyed with the idea in prior years of going to grad school to get an MFA in printmaking. Unfortunately, they don't have them they do have them for painting, but not for drawing. Drawing is like where my heart is, more drawing printmaking versus a lot of programs lean more drawing painting. I love to paint, but I lean the other way most of the time. So I would go for printmaking, but first of all, it's so expensive, obviously. But it's also such a crazy competitive environment in terms of even just getting into the schools. It's very scary, very intimidating, but I've considered it. I think it would be really cool to, again, move to a new place, wherever that might be. My dream school for grad school is the Rhode Island School of Design.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think that's one of the most known ones. Like people tend to know when you say RISD, like what you're talking about. The funny thing about RISD is I actually got into their graduate program for teaching. This is a whole different thing. My plan, even in high school, was to teach high school level art.
Oh,
And
really?
I think mostly as an inspiration of Mrs. Golden and like
Oh, I
how
love
much she
that.
influenced me. Yeah, I was like, okay, I want to do that too. It was really cool. Applied to programs for that. I applied to MICA, which is the school I went to my first year of college. And then I applied to RISD, got into both, got their highest scholarships. It was like, okay, well, now I get to decide which one of these amazing schools I want to go to. And I can like start my career. RISD's program is basically like, if you get in, go, because you're guaranteed a flourishing career and whatever. That's pretty much where it's at. And it's in terms of art related things, it's a huge name. If you throw out, oh, I went to RISD, they're like, your name is in my books right now.
Wow.
It's a big thing, which I think kind of sucks in a way, but it's because, okay, you have to pay all this money and have this name attached to your name in order to whatever. It was a big thing. So I was really grateful to get into the school. And ultimately, I remember being so anxious about it. This was 2-3 years ago, maybe 3, I think. And I was so anxious about it and I didn't know why. And I realized one day, I literally remember waking up. It was like the few days before I would have had to make a decision, either accept or reject their offer. And I woke up and I remember like rising from the dead and being like, oh my God, I don't want to teach my whole life.
Oh,
like
really?
It's unfortunately like that's just not where my heart was. And I think that I grew up in an environment that made you think you have to have a stable career that is very linear. Okay, you go to school for this and then you go into that job and then you have that job for 4 years and then you retire. And so I was like, well, with art, it looks like that's just about the only thing that I can do. So I guess I'm going to teach. And I was very influenced by Diane and how she impacted my life. And I was like, well, that's a really great way to still give back and be part of that community and influence other kids to follow their dreams. But then I kind of realized that, okay, she was influencing me to follow my dreams and to pursue art. And then I'm kind of almost like doing a disservice in not actually doing that.
Right.
It's funny because I don't know if that makes sense, but I actually,
no, it does.
I posted about this whole thing along the way. And I remember she reached out to me at one point. I don't know if she realizes how much this impacted my decision, but she basically said in so many words, I believe in you so much. And she's like, one of my biggest regrets is not knowing like, what if I had pursued art as a career and not just as teaching. She's like, I think about it every day. Obviously, she says she loves teaching and that she's so glad she ultimately did that. But she does wonder, like, what if I did throw my work into shows and what if this? And so I was like, okay, you know what, then I'm just going to go for it. And when in doubt, I could always teach. I could always fall back on that and do that and get certified to do that. So I turned the program down and now I'm just slowly trying to like work my way into that world. If I were to go to RISD for an MFA, which is different from the MAT, which is a Master of Arts in Teaching. An MFA is just a Master of Fine Arts, and it would be for printmaking. It would mostly just be about building my skills more, building my portfolio, but it would also give me the opportunity to teach at the college level if I wanted to. And I think that would be more where my interest would lie, because a lot of the times teachers in that college environment are practicing artists as much as they are teachers. And that's a very important balance in that world. I do have a passion for teaching and I really enjoy doing it. I guess I didn't want to be stuck in that cycle. Unfortunately, so many teachers end up in, especially in art or music, where they kind of think that, oh, I'm going to teach, but I'm also going to do my own stuff when I get home. And it ends up just being that you just don't have the time for it. And it's so hard to make the time for it when your life is dedicated to these kids and their futures. It was a really weird thing to come to terms with. The long answer is really the short answer is I don't fully know. I feel like I have so many directions I could go and that I want to go, and I'm just kind of taking it a step at a time.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you
Crazy.
have so many amazing
Yes.
goals and ideas and dreams, and that's really cool because, who
Yeah.
knows where you could end up, but you'll definitely end up somewhere really cool.
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
see.
definitely, definitely. Well, that is amazing. Well, Brittany, thank you so much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you being so honest and vulnerable and talking
Yes.
about just your struggles with ADHD and your anxiety and your
Yeah.
procrastination and imposter syndrome. It's
Yes.
really just refreshing to hear that, and just looking at
Yeah.
your Instagram. I mean, your art is gorgeous. I mean, so that's
Thank
really,
you.
really great. I really appreciate that.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Yeah, it was such a great conversation. Was that a phenomenal interview or what? I loved that Brittany was so honest and open about her struggles with anxiety, her ADHD, procrastination, and her imposter syndrome. I think it's really, really good and comforting for people to hear that even someone as successful as Brittany, who's had numerous art shows and has a degree in art and is a professional artist, still struggles with those things. I think it's really good for people to hear that that is normal and it is something that you can overcome. Really, really awesome. And I really thank Brittany for being that vulnerable and honest. I think it's really refreshing and so good to hear. I will put all of her links in the show notes. Go check Brittany out. Her art is absolutely incredible. You can commission her art. I mean, her art is just incredible. And you can check out her Etsy and buy her art on there as well. Can't wait to see what Brittany's going to have going on in the future. I think she's going to go really far with her art. She's so incredibly talented. And I just love her passion for the vegan lifestyle. And it is something that I'm inching my way into. So Brittany talked about doing it cold turkey, and her partner Tyler just kind of went for it. I am not that way, and I think either way you go about it is fine. I admire people like that can do things cold turkey. I am not that kind of person. Unfortunately, I wish I was. So I really had to ease into being vegetarian. Like each year I cut out something out of my diet, and now I'm substituting things. So I don't drink cow milk anymore. Now I was drinking almond milk, and now I'm drinking oat milk. I substituted butter for non-dairy butter, and I substitute ice cream for non-dairy ice cream. So I'm more of like a slow mover in that direction. As for clothes, it is really hard for me. I'm not really like a label reader, and I don't know, I have a hard time kind of understanding those kind of things, and with the different terminology, just kind of gaining a grasp on what is vegan and what isn't is a little difficult for me. So as with clothing anyway, I buy secondhand. So I really love Buffalo Exchange. I really love Plato's Closet, stores like that. So even though the products may not be vegan per se, you aren't buying it from the big chain stores. You're really buying it secondhand, so it got its use already. And so I think that's helpful too, especially from an environmental standpoint. So really cool. If you're interested in becoming vegan or leaning towards vegetarianism or just cutting meat a little bit out of your diet or your lifestyle, your clothing, if you want to use cruelty-free products, check out my show notes, because I'm going to put all the links that Brittany mentioned in the show notes. And I'm also going to put a lot of good documentaries, because like Brittany said, watching a documentary for her and Tyler kind of shifted their mindset. And that's how it started for me too. Years ago, I watched the documentary Earthlings, and that really changed my life. And from that moment of watching Earthlings, I immediately started cutting meat out of my diet. So I think documentaries are a really great way to learn new things and understand and really figure out what's going on in the food industry. It can be disturbing. I wouldn't recommend Earthlings just because it is really traumatic to watch, but I will put other documentaries and everything in the show notes if you want to check them out. And if you have any tips for going vegetarian, vegan, anything like that, let me know in the comments below. And until next time.